norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are wet. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too. Hello and welcome to Boy, Girl, Mom and Dad. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Nick.
We're so glad you're here today. Today we're going to talk about mental load. We're going to define it. If you don't know what that is, don't worry. But before we get into that, we have a couple updates. We like to do some updates, chat a little bit. And I wanted to give an update on last week. I gifted Nick what's called the Beard King. And basically, you put it around your neck like a bib, and then it connects to the mirror. And then you can trim or clip or shave your beard, and it connects all of the hairs. So none of it goes in the sink, and it's an easier cleanup, if you will. And Nick has used it. What did you think?
What did I think? It worked well. I trimmed my beard too short, but it did work well. I'm not sure if you found any extraneous evidence.
I didn't really.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So would you use it again?
I would use it again at home. I'm not going to use it at the gym.
Well, I laughed when you said you packed it in your gym bag, like you took it with you, like you were gonna use it there.
No, I mainly put it in the DOP kit because, like, for Paris or whatever trips are coming up, it would be nice to just have it there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use it at the gym. I had that thought the other day. I think it'd be hilarious if I was in the gym, like in the locker room, taking up a whole area of the sink with this giant beard thing.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to mention. I know Christmas is coming up. It'd be funny as a stocking stuffer. I think it's like $25 or under. Just like a funny little gift. It's actually quite useful. Okay. You want to dive right into our TIFF? Are you ready? We do a TIFF every week. If you are new here, basically talking about what we like to do in certain instances. And sometimes we're on the same page. Sometimes we're on opposing pages and we want to see what you think. This day we are on opposing pages. Are you ready? Okay.
Yep.
So my question is, do you put it down or do you put it away? There are two types of people. Do you put it down or do you put it away? I like to put it away. Meaning, if I'm cooking breakfast, I will use it and put it into the fridge when it's done.
Which side are you on for the people? Which side of this are you on?
Put it away.
Okay. I have a lot of evidence to the contrary, but please finish your point.
So Nick likes to put it down, meaning he will stack it beside the fridge. It's kind of like the equivalent of putting the plate on top of the counter right there above the dishwasher or in the sink instead of just putting it straight in the dishwasher. With the fridge example, sometimes things get left out on the side of the counter if you don't put it away. And to me, I'm just like, okay, let's work smarter. I can use one motion and put it away. Or I can put it down, I guess, and put them all together. But then I sometimes have to use, like, he'll make a pile up. And so in that instance, I feel like it's not like one fell swoop. Would you like to take the floor?
Yeah, I'm very excited to take the floor. When you wear your apron and you're cooking, where do you put it when you're done?
You didn't finish your sentence. Where do I put it? What?
Where do you put your apron when you're finished with it?
Oh, depends where I am.
Right. So not away is the answer. When you're done with your shoes, when you walk in the house, where do you put those?
I either put them right there by the step because it's a system that we both agreed on, or I take them off and put them on the stairs for me to take up.
Okay. The answer is wherever you take them off. You leave them wherever you take them off. That's the answer. When you're done with your apron, you put it whatever on the closest chair is to you. You don't put it away. So I guess I'm interested in why you've placed yourself in the camp of put it away because, man, you don't.
I think in where it makes sense, and I know it's obviously makes sense for me, but I'm not going to walk upstairs at that point and put it away.
The two examples I just gave you are downstairs, close to the places where you don't put them away.
I hear what you're saying, but it's not what I mean. Like in where it's available, I put it away.
Objection.
The fridge is different than shoes. Like I'm not going to walk upstairs.
Okay. So I can defend that. So do I lay things by the fridge in prep to put them away? Yes, I do. But I put them away, and I put them away at once so that I only have to open the fridge once. and I'm not replicating that motion like 30 times. And to be clear, when I'm doing that, I'm doing it for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe, collecting everything over there while I'm cleaning up, and then I'll batch put it in. I usually do a similar thing with the dishwasher because it's disruptive in our little L-shaped kitchen to open either one of those things. So if I can minimize the time I'm being disruptive, I'm maximizing my productivity.
What about laundry when you like to put it beside the basket instead of in the basket?
Yeah, I'm not good at that, but recently, since I've been going to the gym, I will put the clothes by the side of the bed that I need to put on in the morning. And then usually the ones I'm going to wear the next day are in the backpack prepared for me to take. So for the most part, I'm not leaving stuff. If I am leaving stuff during the day, there's a reason, and I have been cleaning them up at night. But I've noticed that you've been taking them from me, which I appreciate. But I think your assumption there is I'm just going to permanently.
I'm a horrible wife.
I've just I think your assumption is I'm going to permanently leave them on the bed, and that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I understand the two camps. I think I'm not upset that you brought this up. I think we both have an opportunity to put things away, and I agree. And that's the important thing here. I think we both agree that we should be putting things away immediately. In my mind, you said that with me, but I didn't give you any hint that you were going to. 1, 2, 3.
Immediately. So I usually do updates before the TIFF, but in the formatting of this week, I wanted to do an update after the TIFF simply because I felt like it melded into this episode topic of mental load. And last time we did episode 20, it was on money. It was called a conversation about money and kids. And what I failed to say in that episode is that something to help you figure out what you want to use your money on and how to spend it is to kind of look at your family mission statement. Or if you don't have a mission statement, what are your family values? Because that's what you're going to end up spending your money on. And you kind of want to like check and see, do your money habits align with your values or your mission statement? Because that shapes how you spend your money and your time. And we're going to talk about time today. Mental load has been on our list to discuss, but we just finished the book Fair Play by Eve Rodsky. We would recommend it if you have not read it. So it felt like the perfect timing to kind of discuss this topic, which if you're not familiar, Fair Play is a game. They call it a game-changing solution for when you have too much to do. It does, I think, kind of point at parents, but I think it's great for anybody who is married or has a roommate. I feel like it can be used in roommate situations, but basically it is how to divide the household tasks that have to get done in order to essentially survive and do it in a way that makes everyone as happy as they possibly can be with it. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, it's a way to distribute the workload in a way that everybody understands and reduce frustration and friction between people that are living together. Again, pointed at families, like you said, but anybody.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we mean by mental load? I didn't look, so I don't feel prepared in this aspect for this episode, but I didn't look up mental load definition in Merriam-Webster. Mm-hmm. I'm actually not sure that it's there. But basically what we mean are household tasks that have to get done to essentially run a household successfully. So those are things like, washing the dishes if you don't use paper plates, if you use like real dish. And I say, no, don't roll your eyes. I am with you and we enjoy using real plates, but that is a suggestion. I'm trying to think. There's a book called I think it's How to Run a House Without Drowning or something like that. I'll link it. Nick, did you read it too or was it just me? No. I think it was just me. But that's a suggestion if you have, crippling anxiety or depression, you can't do things like simple things like, washing the dishes, like to use paper plates. Anyway, my point is that somebody has to run the dishwasher. The clothes need to be washed. If you're not washing it, needs to be delegated out. Like Nick and I send our laundry out thanks to Rinse. We pay for that monthly subscription. So it doesn't matter if you're doing it or somebody else has to do it. Somebody has to manage that. It's managing household tasks. So that's kind of like the mental load outside of other things you have to do, whether that be work or taking care of children or whatever it is that you do to spend your time not essentially running a household. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, you covered it and some in details.
I just want to include you. It's not just the Lauren show.
I don't. It's not something we're against each other on, so I don't have any like other supporting point. Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so within the mental load of the household tasks that we have, a lot of those, if not all of them, are invisible work. If you're confused on this, I will link an Instagram post by Professor Emily Oster. She's an economist. I've mentioned her before. I love her book, Expecting Better. She has another 2 books in that series that I've also read. My point is she's credible and great, and she has a slide on Instagram that will help you understand this better. But invisible work are things that get done, and it may not seem like anyone is really doing them per se, because it kind of just happens. You know, somebody has to order the toothpaste in your drawer. Tom Sandoval. Somebody has to order the batteries.
Don't bring him up on this podcast. Get out of here.
My point is that
suggest we're on a team we're not on.
We're not on team Tom Sandoval.
There it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. If you know, you know.
The toothpaste fairy orders the toothpaste.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about.
So a lot of the time, the invisible things don't necessarily feel like they're worth something, or someone could think that it's not worth their time. But I will also link another Instagram post from Big Life Journal, and she gives an example of, it's kind of different, but I'm going to stretch it to make sense with this. But she's basically talking to a group of kids and says like, hey, do you want this dollar or have it? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, okay, I'm going to crumple it up. Do you still want it? And she's like, yeah. Or the kids are like, yeah. And then she like, I think rubs dirt on her or something. And they're like, do you still want it? And they're like, yeah, it's still $1. I still want it. So essentially we've assigned value to $1. The tasks that are invisible, we have not necessarily assigned value to, and they almost sometimes feel maybe like someone doesn't want to spend time doing them, or they're above doing them, or something like that. And so that kind of defines the invisible work and the stigma that goes around with that. And a whole point of fair play, or a main point rather, is that resentment grows out of perceived unfairness. That's a line directly from the book. And basically it means like the person who may be doing a lot of the mental load at times will feel, as they should, like they're doing it all and the other person doesn't care about them.
I would say burdened by I know this is what you meant, but burdened by the mental load, not doing it, right? Because the burden is you feel like you can never get it all done.
Whether you're not getting help or you're not receiving appreciation for doing that, anything along those lines. And and the reason why I brought up the value part of the dollar is that we have, as a society, we have kind of assigned the roles that are visible as to having value, and the invisible ones don't. So that can be really hard. The way that
You're saying visible roles have value, perceptive value, and perceived value, and invisible don't. Okay. Trying to follow.
As a society, like I definitely appreciate, like I feel like, and I feel like you'll back me up in that I am always like, the work someone puts into something. For example, when we talked about the Olympics, like I cannot really watch the Olympics because I cry and I think about all of the work that people have put in. And it's not necessarily when someone loses, but like when they lose by just like a half a second, or something happens, like they drop the baton or they injure themselves. And I'm like, this was their last chance. Like, did I cry at Shaun White's last run? Yeah, I did. But there are other examples as well. And you had a conversation at your Bible study fairly recently about that. Like, you want to talk about that?
I'm not remembering the specific connection.
You were talking about how like I can't watch the Olympics because I see the work that people have done, or like when I go to a party or something like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you spent all this time on it. And I don't think people have parties or are in the Olympics to be have praise for getting things.
Yeah, sorry, done. I'm remembering now. The point was like finding joy in the work and the preparation, not in the result. So the result is the bonus, right? Yeah, that's what it's about. So like I see the value in the victory and whoever's getting the medal, and I understand that work happened, but I don't really like, that's not what's on the forefront and not what I think about. And you and I are different in that, where you almost don't really watch anything around first place. You watch everybody else who came up short, and you consider their workload and everything they've done to get up to that point. Not to say one's wrong or one's right, but I mean, to bring your point at what we were talking about is finding joy in the work so that you're not really able to fail, right? It doesn't mean you can't like pursue the medal, and there's no issue with that, but not receiving the medal, if you're assigning success or failure to that, that's going to be a heavy burden on you.
Yeah. And for example, like whenever we have people over for dinner or something like that, we don't do that for the recognition. We do it because we enjoy it. And I think that's one of our love languages to other people. It's like making them food or things like that. But it's always nice to feel appreciated and seen, and that like, oh, you worked really hard on this. Or I have a friend who came to visit, and she was like, you made us dinner, or y'all made us dinner, and you had newborns and you didn't have to do that, and you did. So to see it feels good. And it's almost like, for me personally, I love to do things, but I also don't like to be taken advantage of. So I don't like to be
may I change that?
Sure.
You don't like to feel as though you're being taken advantage of.
Sure. That's fine.
I know what you're saying feels real to you, but I'm just saying, like, your brain tells you you're being taken advantage of a lot more often than you actually are. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say you're wrong or invalidating you, but
that's fine.
You jump to that place quickly.
That's fine. Yeah. So I prefer, like, I don't mind doing it. I don't want collective you to assume I'm going to do something or just put it on me because I will. But, and my whole point in saying this is that there's a lot of work to put into things that look effortless, and it's nice to feel appreciated whether you did it for that reason or not. Anyway, to wrap that up, like we said, and with the visibility of, say, a dinner party, you see the finished product, you're not necessarily thinking about all the work that went in behind the scenes. So that's kind of what the invisible work is. Another example that comes to mind for me is, like, you can load the dishwasher, but someone still has to press the button and then remove the dishes. You can run the wash cycle on clothes, but you can't just leave them there or they will mildew. Someone has to either hang them to dry or throw them in the dryer and then take them out. Right? I think this is how mental load works. Maybe a spouse is loading the dishwasher, but they aren't doing anything else. Are you cooking the meal, or are you also planning it and buying the groceries? That takes work, which takes us into CPE, which is mentioned in Fair Play, which stands for conceive, plan, and execute. It's used in consulting speak. It's not just original from this book, but it's used in how to play the cards of Fair Play.
You took the point. You're right. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to chat about that, or if you want me to just keep going.
So it's another concept from the book. CPE is like, so we have these tasks that make up the whole mental load of managing the house, right? And each task has a component of CPE, C being conception, P being planning, E being execution. So the advice from the book is not, nobody can contribute in a little way to any of the other tasks, but it is that the CPE portion of each task needs to be owned by somebody. So if we take the dishwasher example, let's say I own the dishwasher card. That means thinking about buying all the soap I need for the dishwasher, like loading it, starting it on a regular basis, emptying it. I own all of those things. If Lauren loads her own dirty dish, doesn't mean she's taking any one of those three parts from me. But since I own that card and I own all three of those CPE pieces, she can just throw her dish in and knows that I own that piece and the rest of it's going to get done. So the argument is somebody needs to own those three and not a distributed portion of those three. Otherwise, the system breaks down. The laundry example is another good one. So like I can throw my laundry in the hamper, assuming you own that card, and I don't have to worry about it getting done or getting folded because you own that card. The same way you wouldn't have to worry about the dishes for me because that's a card.
If the laundry makes it into the basket. Do you put it down or put it away? So the whole thing in the book is that it's not to be like, nope, these are the things I'm doing. It's more so to make your household run successfully, because there's often a breakdown when somebody doesn't own all three parts of the CPE. So one of the examples in the book was the dad, the husband said, like, I am helping, I'm cooking dinner. And like, pause. Okay. Are you also picking the recipe and making sure the groceries are there? Because cooking dinner is essentially the easy part. It's only 1/3 of the three parts of the system. So one of the things that we talked about, and actually a couple episodes now, is how, you would say to me, okay, I'll make the twins dinner. And then you'd be like, what do you want them to have for dinner? And I'm like, oh, I'm annoyed because that's part of the mental load for me. And we've talked about it. Nick was doing it because I tend to have a more specific desire for what goes on their plate than he does, or just have done more research on it. I don't know.
No, I would say you typically have just thought about it sooner.
Yeah.
It's not so when I'm asking you those questions, I'm not thinking, oh, you should know, or I expect you to know more than myself. It's, I assume you've planned it because you typically plan, like you buy birthday gifts 8 months in advance. It's that kind of thing. That's why I'm asking.
But I think it's also just caring of what's, not that you don't care.
For sure.
There's that in it too.
Well, I want to, it's from a place of wanting to meet your expectations if you have them. So like, yeah, you're going into this, but if I'm asking you, it's to understand if you've already thought, assigning no value to whether you have or not. So I'm not saying, hey, what should they have? And then I get mad at you when you say, I don't know, I haven't thought about it. That's a sufficient answer. Like your no, or your, I haven't done it yet, is a sufficient and valuable answer to me. The same way that, oh, I thought they would have mac and cheese is a valuable answer. That's something you didn't understand initially. Right? Yeah,
no, totally. And I can think about an example because we've made it past this. All right. We're not in this fight. And I think you understand.
I would say we've gotten better at it. I don't mean to correct you so much. It's just like, I don't want to assume that we are perfect at that, because I think I can be more clear in what I'm asking and you can release some anxiety and blame from what I'm requesting as well. You know,
my point is I don't think it's an open wound topic for us.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
And like
I'm sorry, I'm not being nitpicky. Don't be mad at Nick.
Being nitpicky.
Nitpicky.
I'm just thinking about, because I feel like as far as like the making dinner example goes, there's been times where I've been like, okay, what would you like to eat this week? And you're like, I don't know. But in that, I'm not being direct about asking it, but I'm looking for help in, can you help me figure out what to make this week? And that's what I'm looking for, not just like, what can I make for you, sweetie? It's more so like, okay, I'm kind of stumped. What should we make this week? And you are always willing. We both enjoy to cook. You're always willing to do it. I think whenever I've handed it over to you per se, it's stressful for me because it's usually not decided until that day. And then by that point, we're both really hungry. We probably don't have the ingredients. And you're like, I can go to the store. But then it's like, going to the store now actually is less helpful for me, and we should just, I'll make it or I'll figure it out type of thing. And so that's where it's been hard. And I think that's where the CPE kind of like helps, is because ideally you're figuring that out beforehand, before the day of.
Right. So we haven't really talked about this that much since both of us have read the book. So I think this is a good okay. place to start. I agree with most of what you're saying. But there's a few like misunderstood expectations in there that I think we should tease out. So for example, that there is a card called making dinner, right? Or whatever we want to call it. And to your point, that includes thinking about and planning what we're going to have in consideration for the whole family, buying the ingredients necessary to make it, making sure we have the ingredients necessary to make it, executing it, and delivering it in the form of a cooked meal, right? It doesn't, I don't think, include cleaning up. We can talk about that later, but
different card.
That's a different card, right? So,
and actually in the book, they separate it from weeknight dinners and weekend dinners, but that's just being
sure,
specific.
Which is just a recommendation. We can figure that part out later. But so what I'm playing out here is it's a weeknight. I've told you I'm going to handle dinner. Our current system, without using the cards and the book we're talking about, I think brings a lot of angst and misaligned expectations and sometimes anger, right? So like, to your point, you get annoyed when I haven't planned something till that day. You expect it to be planned earlier. You feel like you're still partially owning a piece of that task. You feel like you have to talk me through it. You're annoyed that I have to go to the grocery store later than you would like to go to the grocery store. I understand the pain points there. So switch over to the CPE thing and the Nick's owning the task. Do you think that you are able to just trust that dinner gets to the table if I own the task? And I'm not asking in the way of like, do you think Nick's going to get it done? I'm saying there's a lot of like your missed expectations based on how you would cook dinner in what you just described. But are you able to say, okay, Nick's going to make dinner tonight, or Nick's going to handle dinner tonight, and mentally release yourself from all the CPE pieces, assuming I'm going to take them, right? But are you able to do that is the question.
I don't know. The example that I'm thinking of in my head of why it's sometimes hard to release this specific example is because I feel like when it's left to the last minute, we don't make as good decisions health-wise for food. We may end up ordering, which spends more money than maybe we're trying to spend. And then also it may not align with the nutritional value that I'm hoping to put in my body, which affects how I feel. And so I feel like whenever it's left to the last minute, that's typically one of those three things occurs.
Sure. So there's other pieces of the book we haven't talked about yet. Things like weekly reviews, right? And misaligned expectations, talking about how things are going with respect to ownership of the cards. In my opinion, that's the things we talk about and iron out in those meetings.
Yeah.
Right. So same question then, with the knowledge that we're going to have those like retrospectives, that's how I call them at work, right? The adjustments at the end of every week. If I'm owning Tuesday night dinners, are you able to just trust Tuesday night dinners are going to come from Nick?
I don't know. Okay, so mental load, what's on your personal checklist for the day or every other day or however often you do it is probably to take a shower. And I wanted to talk about showers because Primely Pure launched body washes and they are great. I've been using mine. I actually used mine right before we recorded this. I have the citrus and mint one and it's very good. But a lot of body washes out there have sulfates, which is how you get like a bubbly suds, but sulfates are not good for you. These body washes do not have sulfates. They don't have phthalates or PEG compounds, and the scents in them are from essential oils and are not synthetic man-made chemical cocktails. They come in almond vanilla, citrus mint like I have, and then eucalyptus lavender, and they have matching body butter scents too, so you can, use the body wash and then use the coordinating body butter and just feel really nice. But you can use code BGMAD for 10% off of your order. Try them and let us know how you like them.
Do it. BGMAD. So this is one of the big things that for us, when I was reading this book, I thought may not be able to work. Because I think there's a level of trust there that I'm still building with you for the tiny tasks that I have, that I own, that you don't really have yet. So I want to try this kind of a system and I'm open to doing it. But my question to you and maybe challenge to you is, are you able to let me own the cards we're going to give me?
Can I ask a question back to you that might be hurtful, but I'm not
What
trying
if
to
I
hurt
said
you?
no? No.
No, I don't have to.
Yeah,
You
go
can
ahead.
cut it. Can you hold this task and do it and not forget about it?
Yeah, that doesn't bother me. Yeah.
The reason why I'm saying this is there are things that, I'll ask that are small things that I feel like, and I actually think I wrote this down and talk about it later, but we can talk about it now, I would want to talk about something with you or do something with you and you wouldn't want to talk about it then. And so I'm trying to transfer it to you, have the discussion and check it off. Or like I said, just transfer it to you. And in the process of doing that, you're pushing it back to me. So I'm holding the ball now and I have to keep holding the ball along with everything else. It sometimes doesn't get done. I don't want to say it often is a strong word, but it sometimes doesn't get done. And then I'm the one having to remind you about it, which I think is kind of like, I guess I don't have to remind you about it, but a lot of it affects me as well. And this isn't like a huge thing. It sounds bigger than it is for us and like the way that we have things. But,
so I think sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to, but I didn't understand what you were trying to say. I was trying to clarify it. Sorry if I cut you off. We can keep that in. I think there's a difference between like how we organize the ownership, like how we remember the ownership and actually executing the thing, right? Because to your earlier point, a lot of the reason I don't get some things done is because I just don't remember that I was supposed to, right? And I'm not good at that. So like if we had, plug for Hearth, but if we have something like that or agree on a new reminders list or whatever, like the grocery one that's working pretty well, like it would just be nice for me to know where they are. But if we assume that I'm going to know, hey, I've got Tuesday night dinner, are you able to release that to me? I'm trying to focus in on that one thing.
Yeah. And I'm trying to explain why it's hard for me.
But like so I come downstairs in the morning and I'm on a Tuesday, I'm like, hey babe, I know I got tonight and dinner.
And I want to know, when's your last meeting? What time is dinner going to be ready?
But why? Well, because that to me is pieces of my card.
Because am I making the twins dinner? Are you making everybody dinner? Like, that's a clarifying question for me.
Well, if we're defining it the same way the book does, I own dinner. Full stop.
I just need to know when the dinner is going to be ready.
Okay. I think when it's going to be ready is fair.
That's why I was asking when your last meeting was, because that affects whenever.
Sure. It's felt like you were launching into like wanting to know my entire plan for doing it.
No.
Which you have asked those questions in the past with tasks like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm trying to ask you, like, can you let it go? Can you let me own it?
Kind of what I was trying to say about doing things last minute is like, if you're owning Tuesday night dinner, when are you planning that dinner? It doesn't matter to like, it obviously doesn't matter to me, but like, if you're making dinner to be helpful for everybody, but then you have to leave me at witching hour at 5 o'clock or whatever to go get groceries, that's less helpful to me, you going to the grocery store to buy things to cook dinner, than it would be with your support by my side.
Okay. So I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because what the book lays out is that you knowing I have that card is a released burden on you. What you're describing is you're not able to hold on to 2 cards, so one card feels more frustrating. I don't
want to hold on to it, but for lack of a better word, I feel like in certain instances, I can't count on you to get certain things done.
Okay. I hear you, and I don't take offense to that. What I'm trying to get at is like, this system is one of the things we could use to fix that problem, right? And a lot of the reasons that me or you don't finish or complete something or fully own it is because we're not going by a system like this. So I think what I'm trying to do is extrapolate us forward to see if we can use the system. And what it feels like you're doing is saying, oh, because of the current pain we're feeling, we can't use the system. But the system is going to help the pain. So I see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to what you said of just like building the trust of that.
Yeah, but we have to do it to build the trust, right?
Yeah.
Or at least try it.
I just also get hangry. So when will dinner be ready?
Maybe dinner.
When will dinner be ready? Because I maybe need a snack, depending on when it's. That also informs my decision because I don't want to ruin dinner.
Okay, so if this sounds too direct, we can cut it, or you can yell at me on the podcast. If you can't let me do things, the system's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So full big assumption is that I do the cards that I own, right? Let's release that. Let's release the forgetful part. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying if you can't at all let me own the cards I'm supposed to own and let us test the system's going to fail.
Yeah. Yeah, we just need to have the meeting about it. I think, what was I going to say? I think what's hard, and what the example I was trying to give whenever I was talking about like holding the weight of things and like trying to talk, like hand it to you to have the conversation, but then you'd be like, no, I don't want to talk about it. For me, I don't necessarily I think that you kind of lean into having a bad memory. I do know that like mine is better than yours as far as remembering goes, but I think sometimes you push it out of your brain because you don't want to deal with it. And then it ends up with you, or you can't, or you don't want to deal with it right then. And then you can't go back to it because you pushed it out of your brain. And kind of in the book, the example of like, it starts out in the book that the moms are on the plane and they're just like, okay, I have to think about all these things. And then there was a dad on the plane who was just like happily working on his computer. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it just like,
that was right.
I know, but like, he's not doing anything wrong. It's just the moms at the time, like on the plane, were having to deal with all these other things that they felt like they had to deal with, or otherwise they wouldn't get done. Another example, because I think we need to move on, not because we're not agreeing, but because we have other important things to talk about. But I remember I worked with a girl who they divvied up dinners, like you said, and she would do it one night, and I think her husband had it a couple nights, but maybe they split up like 3 nights during the business week and then 2 nights. And every time it was the guy's time, he'd be like, I want to make that, let's just call it chicken taco soup you make. And she's like, okay, great. And he's like, but how do I make it? Or how do I make it? Why don't you just do it like you make it better? And that kind of goes into weaponized incompetence, which we'll talk about later. But go ahead. What?
I just like, I want to focus in on what, like, I feel like we're getting way off into like all the different reasons this book system might not work.
No, that wasn't about the system. That was an example because I think people will relate to that example of like how this book could help.
Okay.
Because if they were implementing this system, then he should have already figured out, like, it's okay to ask a question, but if you're asking the day of, the night of, when it's your time to make dinner, and you're like, oh, I want to make this, what is it? What do I have to do to make it? And what are the ingredients and where can I get them? Do we have them? You're basically putting / sharing the mental load on the person you were supposed to be taking it away from to do it that night. That's all I'm saying. So if they used this CPE system, then he would have already had the ingredients or already known what was needed and known how to make it and wouldn't be asking.
Okay, so I'm with you and I agree. This is the reason I'm asking you the question, because in my scenario and the way I think you would work if we tried to implement this for dinner or anything else is that you wouldn't let yourself forget about it. Forget the trust piece. You wouldn't let yourself forget about it. You want to know how it's going to be done, when it's going to be done, whether it's going to meet your expectations. I don't think that you can release a lot of those things. The reason I brought dinner up is because that's one of the things you have the most control over, because you think about a lot of it ahead of time. You like to do the pre-purchasing. You like to think about what the twins are eating, right? Mm-hmm. So I gave you a hard one on purpose. To me, it feels like, yes, I understand that the conception, planning, and execution would all be on me in that scenario. And I also understand I shouldn't ask you, how do you make it? What are the ingredients? I shouldn't dive into all those things. I agree with all those points. I'm saying, even if I take it and own it and say nothing to you besides dinner's going to be ready at 6, I'm challenging whether you would let me do it. Because to me, success in that scenario is dinner's ready at 6 and it's on the table. That's success. It doesn't matter if I go to the store. It doesn't matter if anything else happens. It doesn't matter, right? What matters is I have the card, I owned it, and I did it. I'm challenging whether that's success for you, because what feels like what success is for you is that all these other little pieces of other cards are also considered, and that you know a lot of details of what's going to happen, about what's going to happen before I'm doing it. So like, it feels like you're trying to pull my card a little bit back to yourself in this scenario. That's why I'm bringing it up. I know you want to move on, but like, this to me is important. If we're going to try and implement the system, we have to try it.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think I've gotten a little bit better. And like, there are things that I told you, like, okay, I'm taking this off my list. I am closing that tab in my brain. Yeah. Whether it's putting it on a reminders note or the note that we go through on the weekly budget meetings we're supposed to be having, that type of thing. Can I give an different example?
Sure.
So an example in the book, just to get off the dinner topic.
We can get off dinner.
Was an example that your spouse needs to drop the kid off at the birthday party, but they don't buy the gift or wrap the gift. And then they also expect you to tell them where they need to be at what time and remind them to go do it and what they need to bring. And so by doing that, they're not owning the full card. I also give an example in the book of like, okay, the mom is packing, and I know it's not the way in every family. For this example, we can just say the dad. We'll say the dad packed the daughter's softball equipment bag that she needed to take to practice, but the mom was taking her to practice and she didn't pack the bag. She didn't really know about the bag or to check for the bag. Well, she took her and the bag was left at home, and then the daughter had to borrow a helmet from the storage closet, which isn't the end of the world, but it had lice, and she ended up getting lice, and then it caused all this other work of like at home having to, strip the sheets and steam out the lice or whatever and work through the hair, and they have to stay home from work, and somebody has to stay home from work with the child. All of that stuff would have been prevented had someone owned the whole card, the total responsibility transfer that I referenced with Emily Oster, because when someone's owning everything, they know all the moving parts. When someone's owning one part, they don't. And so those are just other examples of why it's important to have the total responsibility transfer. I will say that it's not like you can't not help with someone's card. Like if you were coming home from work and it was my night to do dinner and I needed an avocado, you would stop and get that for me. But it's also not your fault if you cannot stop and get the avocado for me. It's like, if you need help, it's best to arrange that before the day, just to show respect for that person and then not have the resentment that is kind of bleeding over.
I hear you. So I think what I'm taking away in reading that book is that if you own a card, you are accountable for it.
Yeah.
So like, that doesn't mean you're expected to perfectly execute it.
Yeah.
That's a big distinction. So like, for example, the scenario you just gave, right? Dad forgets the cleats or whatever it was, right? He's owning the task and he forgets them. How he responds and adjusts before the next thing, I think, is indicative of whether he's owning the card or not. So if he is annoyed a little bit with himself and he's like, oh, I know next time this is something I need to have on the list, I need to improve. That's good because that's still him owning the task and the whole card, right? If he is annoyed because mom didn't pack it, that's distribution of responsibilities. Or he's annoyed that mom didn't tell him for a card that he owns what he should be doing. That's the conception piece or the planning piece or whatever that he's not owning. That's the fault in the system. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think as the other person, it can also be frustrating to see somebody make decisions and not prepare for the scenario. And then that's what kind of sets, I'm trying to say. So like, instead of prepping the softball bag, they were
right
playing basketball with their friends or playing video games or something, to where it's like, if you would have spent the time that you should have owning this card, I'm just saying it can cause resentment from the other person. We're not just talking about the person who made the error.
Right. What I'm trying to
or also if the person is mad because then the other person has to go get them and like deliver the cleats or whatever. It can affect relationships in that way, because it seems mistakes happen. But to your point, how you go forward with them definitely defines like what's actually happening.
I think what I'm struggling with is that you and I seem to be defining success of owning a card differently. Because it very much feels like your definition of success, if I own a card, is that I'm doing it the way and with as much preparation as you would. You know, it's hard to not feel abrasive there, because it's kind of what we don't have to talk about dinner again. We can talk about any other scenario, but like, you're kind of validating my point that like, you're saying you should be planning instead of playing video games. That's not the point. The point is it done to the satisfaction of both of our expectations? If the answer is no, then we talk about it in one of the weekly review meetings. And you're like, hey, thank you for doing this and owning this card. I think our standard should be here. And we talk about what success looks like. It doesn't mean I'm not using the system right. And I would also go as far to say, I shouldn't have to plan as far ahead as you do. I should be meeting the minimum standard of care, which is from the book, right? As you and I have defined it together. So it feels like what you're bringing up are like opportunities for us to adjust and align on the minimum standard of care and what defines success for the execution of that card, not how it should be executed. I don't think going into how it should be executed is ever going to be successful for us, because that's me trying to force my lifestyle on you and you trying to force yours on me. And that kind of, it feels like it breaks down the ownership concept of the cards.
Yeah, I think that it goes back to kind of what I mentioned of what are your family values and what's your mission statement and what are you trying to accomplish. I think when you leave things to the last minute, then things can cost more than you would like them to and things like that. But I agree with what you're saying, and you're right. And I think that you have come over to my way in certain things of like how you pack your gym bag at night, which seems normal to me. No, I'm someone making, I didn't mean it in a mean way. I promise. I meant like,
I know you did it, but it
like
did
people will
sound that
listen
way.
and be like, what do you mean you pack your gym bag at night? But you have packed your gym bag at night and you're all ready to go. So you can just walk out the door in the morning. And, you know, I feel like that is more like me. And so I think that you would learn, we would learn, I would learn on how to better like meet in the middle and with our family values. As long as they're aligning with our values that we've agreed on, I feel like it's okay how you get it done.
Okay, so we haven't talked about minimum standard of care yet.
No.
Minimum standard of care, or what I call MVP in my industry, minimum viable product.
Am I the MVP?
Well, yeah, but you're a different MVP, most valuable player, most valuable person. MVP means minimum viable product in my work world. Minimum standard of care is how it's referenced in the book. What it means is, what's the baseline criteria for us as a team to agree that this card has been completed to our expectations as a family. So an example, if we use your sports example, minimum standard of care is that Olive and Cypress have everything they need in the bag that I have packed if I'm owning, bringing them and doing the sports stuff. They have everything they need. They get there. They're able to do their stuff, right? That would be a minimum standard of care. If I've forgotten a cleat, I'm not meeting the minimum standard of care. How and when I've gotten, purchased, found, and packed the cleat doesn't matter. What matters is that we get them there and they have what they need. That's the minimum standard of care.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to tease out here. So for example, pick your favorite meal. If I make you your favorite meal at the last minute, go to the store at the last minute, order it a different way than you would, but it's on the table at 6, that to me is a minimum standard of care. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just also thinking like, okay, well, did we stay within the budget? Am I alone with screaming children? In regard to the cleats, is now the house in a frenzy because the bag wasn't packed the night before because you can't, not you, but collective you can't find the cleat, and then now I'm having to run around help find cleats that we could have done last night and been in not stressed out.
But you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You're assuming that you have to participate in that.
Yeah.
So, okay, the no is a full sentence example. If I can't find the cleats and I'm trying to find them, to pack them, I'm trying to meet the minimum standard of care. I'm still owning the task. If I ask you, have you seen them? And you say no, I'm not asking you to help me look. I'm not asking you and assuming you know where they are. I'm asking for a piece of information. And if you know that I own that task, you should feel confident and guilt-free in saying, no, I haven't seen them. And then go to another card that you own.
I think that's my problem, is that like I hear that and feel like, oh my gosh, I need to help, to the detriment of myself, which we've talked about before.
This is the question I had 20 minutes ago. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm saying, are you able to let me own the card?
TBD. We'll get back to you.
And to further clarify, I'm not asking if you're able to trust me with it. I'm saying, are you able to forget that it exists and let somebody else handle it?
I don't know.
So in the same way that I think I'm going to have a challenge with this system in remembering what my cards are and holding myself accountable to complete them, I think you're going to have a problem letting them go and having us be okay with failure a little bit. Right?
I'm refraining from singing Frozen right now. So everyone, you're welcome.
Let it go. Yeah. Well, now it's all in our heads.
Yeah, you're welcome. Something, this isn't, this
Do you
is
agree with
slightly,
that?
yeah, I can agree with that. Something that kind of goes with this also is that it doesn't have to be that you're doing all 3 parts to be supportive. So something that has helped us, if we're going to the dinner scenario, I was using my work time, nanny time, to think about recipes and order groceries, because we often order them versus getting them in person. And something you can do to help somebody in my shoes, which Nick has done, is like, okay, you're not doing the CPE for the dinners, but if you can give me 30 minutes to myself where you're watching the kids or whatnot, and I can use that time to figure out what we're eating, that's extremely helpful. And I feel like pretty minimal on the other person's end. So just an example of like how you can support somebody.
So your point is the line doesn't have to be so hard that you're not like helping each other.
Yeah.
It's just the accountability piece.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. That's why I was saying a bit of that earlier, in that the accountability is one of the biggest things I took away from it. Like if you're in that scenario, you're asking to set aside your responsibility for that task so that you can do something else, completely fine. And I should be able to help you in that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just wanted to give an example. Like we haven't sat down and laid out all these cards, but the other night, Nick was almost on with the book at this point. We were laying in bed late at night and trying to do stuff like final touches on our Europe trip. And I was feeling very stressed about a lot of different things, a lot of different tabs open in my head. And Nick handed me the credit card because we were booking museums and stuff. And I was like, okay. And he was like, he took it from me and said, I'm taking the card for this. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to think any more about it. And I started crying because I physically felt like the weight lift off my shoulders and it just transferred to him. So I just wanted to say that because I feel like it can be more than you think. It can affect someone more than you think when you do that for them. When you take something over and you don't really know how much the weight of it affects them.
Mm-hmm. And like, that's great. I want that to happen a lot more. I think that's going to happen for me as well, as we define things that I'm going to give up and let you own. I may not cry. I mean, I don't think I've ever cried, but I may not cry. But I'll have those feelings as well. I think we just need to give ourselves and each other a little bit of grace as we step into owning those things, because we're not going to do it really well the first time or even up to the 10th, you know? Like,
yeah, I'll just pack snacks. I'll just get hangry.
You'll what?
I just say I get hangry. I think that's why I go back to food, is because food is so important to me.
Then maybe it's not a good card for me to own, you know? Like, that's fine.
We can work on it. I'm just saying, like, I don't know.
So, and I didn't get to unpack this, but something I think we're going to need to be okay with is allowing the other person to fail a little bit as they get comfortable with owning their card. Okay. So here's another example. If the kids don't make it to their practice and I own that card, doesn't matter why, I'm not meeting the minimum standard of care, right? Our house doesn't blow up because that doesn't happen. And if it doesn't happen and I'm not meeting the standard of care, it's something I need to improve. It's something we can talk about in our planning meeting. Like, hey, how can we help you not forget that you own this thing or whatever, right? Still my responsibility. I'm still accountable. If you try and step in and make sure something happens and don't let me fail, you're taking ownership of that card.
Mm.
Okay. So I'm not saying don't help. If you want to remind me, that's fine, right? Confirm that I have it planned, whatever, that's fine. But like, I'm bringing this up because I know you have this in you a little bit. If you don't think it's going to be done to your standards, you jump in and do. How many times have you given me the example of, I don't have to lead the group project, but if nobody's going to step up, I'm going to lead the group project.
Yeah.
You do that a lot and it bears good fruit. But if we're going to do this system, I don't think outside of an impossible emergency, we need to let each other fail, right? So dinner is another one. Like if I'm owning the dinner card and you're wondering if I'm owning the dinner card and you're wondering what I'm planning, wondering if it's actually going to get done, you're not releasing your mental load of that card. You have to let me fail.
It's making me think of the book that I mentioned before called The Gift of Failure. I'll link it. And it goes a little bit far, in my opinion, as far as letting the kid fail. But to your point, you learn from failure, or you should learn from failure. Mm-hmm. So I think that's hard, especially like, I do feel like, okay, you can't, not you, collective you can't do it. I need to take this from you because that's the only way it's going to get done.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's never a possibility. Like there's sometimes where I own the card and I have an emergency work meeting and I can't do it and we need to transfer or whatever. Like, fine. I don't mean let's intentionally let each other fail. But if we're not releasing the mental ownership of the card, then I don't think we're realizing all the benefits of what the book is suggesting.
Yeah.
Suggesting.
Yeah.
Pronunciation, Nick.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Lauren and
Nick
here. And we're just going to go back and forth between our sentences. Just kidding. We've never done this before, but this is going to be the end of part 1. Mm-hmm. We're going to divide this episode into 2 parts just because we felt like it'd be better. It's a little bit long and yeah.
We think it's a good conversation. We didn't want to cut too much out and we had a lot of content. So it's going to be 2 episodes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for listening. Send us a DM at boygirlmom.com or follow us on our website, boygirlmom.com. Sign up for our newsletter. You know what to do. Just come back next week for part 2.
Thanks for listening.
Boy, girl, mom died. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.